So, immigration has become one of the most emotional conversations in South Africa. While communities are frustrated, migrants are often caught in the middle, and misinformation is spreading faster. And today we're joined by Dr. Ngidi to unpack further. Dr. Ngidi, it feels as though South Africans are being asked to choose between compassion and law enforcement. But is it really actually that choice, or is there any other way of thinking about this conversation?
What a roller coaster of a 3 weeks we've had in this country, yeah?
Yes,
I
yes.
never thought in the 27 years that I call this place home, I would have to be confronted with issues and questions like these from all over the world, not just yourself, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And one question that keeps lingering in my mind is what happens to Ubuntu now?
Mm,
And, because South Africa was lauded as the custodian of this Ubuntu. And I think, first of all, I'm a Pan-Africanist. So a
right.
Pan-Africanist does not exclude us from encouraging illegality of
Mm,
any sort in any space.
mm,
But as a Pan-African, we also have history on our side.
mm,
And one of the beauty of this history is that the more we go back to it, we understand the historical migration, both forced and encouraged.
right.
The enforced one where, Mfetrani and ones have to run to other parts, regions of the southern part of Africa, but also the labor force that was
Mm,
brought in from all different sides. I'm just saying that before I answer that, I want your listeners to really get a sense of a bit
mm,
about where I'm coming from. So I would always
right.
answer with history on my side.
Mm,
And so compassion, I don't think has ever left South Africans in South Africa. I think uh, empathy and compassion are important elements of being an African.
mm,
And unfortunately, in the media, it's almost scorned on because we are too compassionate or we're too empathetic. But I really believe that what we experienced in the last couple of weeks could have been done differently.
mm,
And I believe also that, without a doubt, that not just the idea of the resources are being taken by others, but then I ask, what happened to the real resources?
mm,
And why are we not marching and marching on the real resource takers?
mm,
So that's one
mm.
of my issues about this whole thing, right?
Yes, yes.
The second thing for me is this morning, Portia, I got up with a notion at 4 o'clock this morning was, okay, if all the migrants are going,
Mm,
what's going to happen with alcohol intake of our people? Because we do know that South Africa is one of the highest alcoholic country. And once alcohol is in the mix,
mm,
productivity goes nowhere.
right.
So will that help us on the alcoholic issues that we have amongst our young people? And will that bring it down so that people can be more aware, more astute, and more productive? So there'll
Mm,
be no more Babalas Mondays because everybody will be busy running their own companies or their own spaza shop. So there'll be no time to Babalas.
mm,
I'm just putting it out there. In terms of your question, and I'm going to answer it like this.
mm,
I don't think compassion has gone through the door.
right.
I think desperation has entered in. I think the arrogance of ignorance on
Mm,
who we are as a collective people has been allowed to find its wings. And so those are the things that I believe that one needs to be spending time on. How did we get here?
right.
we were always gonna get there when more and more of the resources in the bigger space was actually being confined. Factories were closing down. So it was a gradual resource limiting issues. So I believe that this was just the timing. I believe that South Africa in someone's trying to call me 1 second. I believe that South Africa was being looked upon as possible a different way in which we were going to handle things with our neighbors. The word xenophobia, Portia, has been planted around, and I really want us to spend time and look at the word Afrophobia.
This was going to be
And
my
I don't
next
know that
question,
people
absolutely.
are really afraid of. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Go
go
ahead
on,
with the
don't go,
question.
go on, Doc. You're right on the track. This was going to be about me asking the debates on the polarized, the public debates, and South Africa being called xenophobic. Is it really xenophobic or Afrophobic, or all these four big names that are coming? But on the other side, there's also people that are saying government of the country has failed to manage the process and policies. So, what do you think both sides are missing? Because there needs to be a link that is going to assist in all these problems.
Cannot undo the fact that as a liberation country, South Africa was helped. And many people would like to wish that away or play down the importance of African solidarity. What we didn't do very well at as a government is really study what made liberation movements fail, because you're trying to become a government while you're trying to wean yourself off a liberation organization.
Right.
And unfortunately, that was not managed as best as it should have, with all of the historical knowledge that we would have been able to work with and build on, you know. I don't think we really took the history of liberation movements and their progress, why they fail, why they fall. We didn't take those things seriously. On the other hand, it was a very opportunistic time for the organizations that were leading this march to really take it on. And I honestly do not believe in the word xenophobia for South Africa. Irons. I got WhatsApp messages saying, "Are you safe? How is your husband going to protect you as a Zulu?" And I saw other people who are married, South Africans who are married to other Africans, asking me the question, "Mama Yaa, how do we explain these things to our children?" Because our children are seeing hatred, and that hatred is creating fear. How do we help them to understand that it is the resources more than anything else that's causing people to believe that this is the best way that we can deal with making sure that more South Africans have access to the resources without the numbers of other Africans who are living in South Africa? And my answer to that is, we obviously know that there's always things at play. There's always other forces at play, because Africa's unity, Portia, is not something that anyone outside of ourselves want to see, because it would mean too much. And it would mean a great loss for many people across the world if Africa decide that we're going to hold our resources as a collective continent.
Right.
And so we are mindful of the external players and the
Mm.
external not so well wishes
Mm. The third
for
and the fourth,
Africa's progress
the,
and for
the
our Agenda 2063.
the third and the fourth hands at play. It looks like there are that as well into this.
Absolutely, absolutely. The resources that the organizations have been given, um, the way how they've been able to gather and organize in that
Mm.
quick. And South Africa is a moral authority in the world around the Palestine-Israel issue is also something that we must know that the big players are not happy with.
Mm.
And so one of the biggest things you can do with a country, because again, it's history, is to destabilize, spread propaganda,
Mm.
make the leaders look like they've not done anything towards the progress of a country. And when you can create chaos,
Mm.
then everybody begins to mistrust. When you create mistrust, then everybody begins to start becoming individualized. Everybody is now looking out for their own.
Mm.
No one wants to do things collective. Put Ubuntu in the bag and hang it up kind of approach. And we have to say the third and fourth forces have worked really hard to make sure that South Africa being one of the better stories of economic progress gets destabilized.
Mm.
And that's really what, when we look at the whole thing of March on March, when we look at how it even came about, when we look at who is marching in the street, um, it tells a different story
Mm.
about what's really at play. And because of the numbers, we can also be fooled, Portia, into thinking that because of the numbers of these March and March, it is the numbers of South Africa. It really isn't the majority of South Africa, which is why I've withdrawn the xenophobia from that, because the majority understand what the position is. Unfortunately, our leaders in South Africa have been very, very vague
Right.
about their positioning.
Mm.
And unfortunately for them, others have taken up a position that the masses feel could be the way to go.
Mm.
And therein lies the big problem. Because when our leaders are not clear, when our leaders are not focused, leaders come, in most cases, these leaders, Portia, they come with ego and they come with some kind of a vengeful spirit. They're not really coming to solve a problem.
Mm. 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 And the external forces, then they also get their hands into this. And we often speak about, and we started with Dr. To actually explain this, especially in where we at as the continent itself. Now, let's look into the work. You have worked across different countries, migration context. Maybe what lessons have you seen elsewhere in South Africa that South Africa probably could realistically look into, maybe adapt into? Of course, we cannot copy, but just to adapt as a country to actually assist ourselves and the continent itself.
Yeah, I really, that's a good question, Portia. I never thought I was going to be asked that question, but let me give it a shot. So I have been really blessed to see 42 African countries, and I've lived in places like India. I've lived in places like Brazil, one of the most unequal places in the world.
Right. So we are here now after the 30th. Now, how do you move forward?
Well, how do we work on mistrust? How do we work on unbelievability? Because most people cannot believe that a country like South Africa could ever have gone that low.
Mm.
Um, uh, but I do know that we have a generation that are questioning things much more deeper and with much more comprehension.
Mm.
And I am relying on the logicalness of South Africans to understand the complexity of this. Because the dignity of the indignity of the migrant African is the indignity of the South African.
Mm.
So if we are truly the custodians of Ubuntu, right? I am because you are. Whatever indignity another African faces, we are also part of that indignity.
Mm.
And I think people will say, oh, well, it's all up there. So my question is, as you know, Portia, I live in a village. There are some Ethiopians who have shops and all of that. These shops have been closed. When we ask in our conversation a week ago with the local people who are here in the center, so who is going to take over those containers? You know what they said to me? One particular woman, Maduma, said to me, she says, Ma, we can't wait for them to come back because when we don't have any money and we say to them, can we just get half of our bread? They give it to us on credit. With our South African people, they will never give us credit. We will never, even if we are hungry and we go and we say, can we get 1 kg sugar? This is an experience I'm having a week ago. So we do know, and we're saying, yes, we need to know where everybody is in the country. It is only the right protocol. It is the right thing to do that when you come into a land, even if you come into a home, you say who you are, where you're from, and why you are here. It's a natural occurrence for anyone who is migrating when they come upon a people to explain themselves, to make themselves be known, and to make sure that the community knows where they're from, why they're here, and how they came here. There is nothing wrong with asking for that. But there's a culture amongst migrants where self-reliance and sustainability is a key value of a migrant person. Because when you come into a community, you know you can't get grants. You know you're starting from scratch. Your mental set, your mindset operates on a survival mode, knowing that you have to keep moving, you have to keep working, you have to keep pushing. And that is what I think people have not actually stopped to think. Why do migrants seem to be making it more than others? And that's a question that most people are not asking because they don't want to know. Why are migrants, they complain Somalians are getting together, they're putting things together, they're getting their funds together, Ethiopians are doing. Because when you're in a case where you are alone, when you are in a case where there are few of you, you have to find a way to be resilient, to make sure that, by the way, Portia, these migrants who are being resilient are actually helping the government, but by not putting pressure on them to find them work, to get them things, they are trying to make their own way, to have their own independence so that they can also eat, so that their children can also survive. And those are some of the softer conversations I wish more Africans in South Africa could have with other migrants.
Yeah, we definitely need another episode just for that alone, Doc, because there's so much to unpack there. I will give you a typical example on top of my head. When you walk around town, it's totally just owned by either Ethiopians or people from Africa. You will find no shop. From when you ask around, why is that? It's because they call it monopoly. The guys are monopolizing the economy. They're monopolizing the system. That's why I'm saying it's a topic on its own, and to unpack it honestly, because in both fronts, one might be more correct than the other, but there needs to be systems in place as well. If you look into it
Yeah.
directly. When you look into the economy of the Durban CBD, 70% of it is not even on the hands of South Africans. It's just with the foreign nationals. That a very big thing to confront on how we're making the playground to be fair and to just play level it for everyone to be able to play. Because when you look into it deeply, it really has not been fairly played. Government will just haphazardly say they puts things in place, but when you go further into it, it's not actually in that way. So that one is a bit,
And so, Portia, you're right. And so, Portia, nobody's asking who owns the buildings in Durban CBD.
true,
It's not Black Africans,
not
it's
at all.
foreigners.
Mm,
Who owns the bed and breakfast and all these big hotels that
mm,
we see? It's not South Africans. It's it's foreigners from Europe, foreigners from America, foreigners from Germany who
mm,
are owning our key things. And so I'm saying,
mm.
let's really have that conversation. Who owns
Absolutely.
what in South Africa?
Mm,
And is the discussion around the migrants who are here, is it really true that these migrants are the ones who are taking over? How did they get to rent these spaces? Who
mm.
are their landlords? And these are some of the things that we need to talk about.
As we conclude the talk, because of the time crunch on my side, I'm so fumbled that we started a bit less. But um, let's look into this. If this conversation was taking place in Kenya and Ghana, Nigeria, Jamaica, or instead of South Africa, would it sound different? Or many other countries that are still right now wrestling with the question? I'm just going also to add this one. What question do you think Africa still hasn't asked, honestly, about the migration conversation?
Uh, well, the biggest question is, do we still have to accept the Berlin Conference of dissecting of Africa?
Right, right.
Do we still have to accept it?
Mm,
And do we just consider ourselves as regions and not as autonomous nations?
mm,
Uh, is it a crime that Africa wants its own one Afro, and
mm,
it wants its own way of understanding how to move across the
mm,
continent?
mm,
Those are some of the questions that I believe once we can truly answer them, the historic questions which needs to be answered by our leaders.
mm.
Once these questions are answered, I think we need to look at referendums. We need to look at realigning and dealing with these forced borders, and what happens when we get rid of them. How do our people travel across the continent and get themselves registered? Because no one wants to leave their home unnecessarily.
True.
No one wants to go away from their home. So
Mm,
that's the question, I believe. Those are some of the many questions that we need. The other question for me is, the people will always find a way to travel.
right.
And we must be able to say, in a very proactive way, our governments must say, like they're doing in Tanzania, like they're doing in Namibia, the most powerful woman leader at this point in Namibia. She's saying that I will not be asking my neighbors to get visas to come and visit me.
Right.
And she's done that where you can walk into Namibia tomorrow as a South African, and all you do is just record your identity.
Mm,
Nothing else is needed of you.
mm,
And I think more of that is going to be the future. The Africa 2063 vision is that the child here in Kwatoyana will pick himself up and take